Every now and then you come across a show that's more than just a show to you. And that's not to say that it's perfect and it doesn't take that much effort to pick it apart. But even after you tear it to shreds in your mind, it stays with you. And you could argue that's nostalgia or emotional manipulation, or maybe it's just that you're an idiot, you know? That's always an option. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly the kind of thing you needed to see at exactly that moment. Whether you're weighed down by the past, or you're scared of what might happen in the future, or you're wasting your life right now, this could be the show that gives you that push to try to become the person you've always wanted to be. Honestly, I really have no idea what I'm talking about. I just happened to rewatch Your Lie in April and man, is it wrong of me to say they don't make them like this anymore? Yeah, you know, I probably shouldn't say that. This anime belongs in that special category of show that is both very popular and highly rated, which means it is definitely overrated. 10 out of 10? I don't think so. But I will go ahead and spoil my own conclusion and say this is a great show. I'm sure you've already used some context clues to piece that together, just like I'm also sure you already know what Your Lie in April is about. But the kids today apparently don't even remember Haruhi, so I'm not really sure what people have seen anymore. Therefore, without any spoilers, Kosei Arima is a loser.
Like you.
But he used to be a winner until one day when his mom kicked the bucket and he stopped hearing the music, so he walked away from competitions. Although he couldn't quite walk away from music entirely. He has a chance encounter with a violinist who's not like all the other violinists because she's dating his best friend and possibly works for Mossad. She takes one look at this broken boy and decides she can fix him, and the rest of the show is her trying her darndest to do just that. And then she dies at the end. Oh, right, this was supposed to be no spoilers. Well, I guess you could say that was my lie in April.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Or maybe I'm lying about what I just said. Maybe Kosei and Kaori get together like they were always meant to and live happily ever after. Nah, she really does die. It's the main thing everyone remembers about this anime. It's very sad. You get attached to these crazy kids on their journey through life only to see them stumble and suffer, and you can't do a thing to stop it. All you want is to see them succeed. You want Kosei to learn to love music again. You want him to make peace with his past. You want him to get the girl and be more than just a remarkable footnote in someone else's story. And speaking of someone else and their story, there are plenty of other characters in this show with stories of their own. Takeshi pushes himself to reach the heights of his long-gone rival. Emi wants to inspire people the same way she was inspired as a kid. Hiroko wants to be there for the person she let down. Tsubaki struggles to understand what it is she wants in life. Kaori does everything she can to leave her mark on the world, and Watari tries his best to score, on and off the field. Are all of these stories expertly written and flawlessly woven into the main narrative? No. In fact, I think a couple of characters confuse the tone and distract from the more striking aspects of this story, but do these stories draw on the heartstrings? Yes. Yes, they do. Now, this is something that people who love Your Lie in April and people who hate Your Lie in April will argue about the most, and I intend to get into it in a minute, after I've talked about the other thing this anime is most remembered for, which I'll talk about after I've talked about how this video is sponsored by Sakurako. If you've ever wanted a taste of Japan but hate going outside, then you're in luck. With Sakurako, each month you'll get an elegant box filled with 20 traditional, authentic, artisan Japanese snacks, all delivered right to your door. Each box follows a theme that changes every month. What you're seeing here is the box for May, and the theme is Savoring Osaka, a region of Japan that has shaped the country's cultural and economic landscape. From merchants to samurai, there's a lot of history and tradition in Osaka, and you can read all about it in the booklet that comes with the box. Castles, special knives, no theater, it's all in there. You can also get a peek behind the curtain to see how some of the snacks are made, and there are some allergy warnings for the week. As for the snacks, I'll highlight a few of my favorites. First, there was the Miyako Kombu. This is pickled kelp with a hefty amount of savory seasoning. Next was the strawberry cream cookie. Now I'm a sucker for anything strawberry, which is why I devoured this one instantly, along with the strawberry cakes. You got the crunchy one and the soft one. It's the best of both worlds. Now every Sakurako box always comes with some tea, and this time it's Fukamushi Sencha. Very calming stuff. Pairs well with the snacks. The specialty item for this box was the Shichi Fukujin Daruma Tenugui. It's kind of a handful to say, and it's a hand towel with cute little designs that doubles as a decoration. As for some of the other stuff, we've got Kinako Warabi Mochi, Osaka Octopus Senbei, Ginger Okoshi, Egg Koban Senbei, and a few other things, one of which I'm sure will be a new favorite of yours once you have it. You can get $5 off your first box when you sign up for a subscription by clicking the link in the description below and using my code. This does help the channel out, and now, back to the video. The music. It is fantastic. Now, I'm something of a classical music enjoyer myself. Often I sit by the window stained with a midday's rain and listen to the Halo 3 soundtrack. There are so many amazing songs in the OST, and that's not even including all the classical tracks played during the various competitions and events. And do I even need to mention the opening song? It's on all the Guess the Anime videos and every list of the top 10 anime openings out there. Even the show knows how good its opening song is. This does make me feel a little sorry for the second opening, since no one ever brings that one up when talking about the music, just like no one ever brings up Kosei's dad when talking about this anime. I'm going to talk about the visuals now. Your Lie in April still looks great all these years later. Everything is so bright and colorful, which is wonderful to look at, but also thematically relevant. Kaori lights up Kosei's world, so of course the world would look pretty, although sometimes the characters will go through periods of darkness and doubt, so the saturated world turns gray and muted to reflect how they feel at the moment. It's pretty basic stuff, but I figured I'd mention it anyway. Also, these designs, not bad. They're not overly detailed or anything, but they just stand out from other designs and shows of a similar nature. I think it has something to do with how everyone actually has lips. Complaints, I do have them. And this first one is no laughing matter, the comedy. Not a fan of it. And I'm not really talking about the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood blob stuff, although I could have done without some of that. No, it's the slapstick that bothers me. Yeah, this is anime, and girl gets upset and beats the snot out of guy in an over-the-top fashion is a staple joke of the medium, although it's one I've never been too fond of, unless you swap the sexes. But regardless, this type of joke happens a lot in this show, and it doesn't work. Not because I don't personally find it funny, but because the butt of the joke is a victim of domestic abuse. Kosei's mom is controlling and cruel. She forces her son to play the piano exactly the way she wants him to. Purely robotic, sticking strictly to the sheet. And if he's off in any way, she hits him hard. And the worst instance of this abuse happens in episode 9, when Kosei enters a competition and plays his best for his mom, thinking that if he would just play better, then his ailing mother would get better. So this time, instead of following the music sheet to the letter, he injects some of his own soul into the notes, redefining it into a serenade filled with love, all directed toward his sickly mother. And her response is anger. She beats him over the head with her cane, publicly humiliating him because his useless emotions ruined the song. His glasses are broken, he's bleeding all over the carpet, and his own mother couldn't care less. So Kosei finally snaps, and he tells her to hurry up and die. These are the last words he ever says to his mother, and this traumatic memory haunts Kosei for years. Do you see the problem here? It's like we're watching two different shows. When his mom hits him, that's bad. When his closest friends hit him, that's funny, I guess? You know, it's actually kind of interesting how this is just another thing Kaori shares with Kosei's mom. They're both musicians, they both care for this kid, and they both use what little time they have left to help him reach his full potential. He's only able to work through his own mommy issues because he sees mommy in Kaori, symbolically. But the show's clear that while his mother's actions can be explained, they can't be excused. She does love her son, and what she did, she only did to make sure she left him behind something. You know, if he became the best pianist in Japan, then he'd be okay without her. But as her condition worsened, she grew more and more desperate and demanding, without ever really realizing that she had gone too far and her own son hated her now. What I find odd is that the show doesn't try harder to reflect this relationship onto Kaori and Kosei, because she also starts to get more desperate and demanding when her condition worsens. But it's like the show was afraid of you possibly disliking her, so it reined her in before she changed too much from her original character. And I think that was a missed opportunity to make Kaori a bit more complex as a character. And I really think it would have made for a more emotional conclusion if Kosei only realized how much his mother loved him and why she did what she did after he experienced the same thing again. Now don't get me wrong, I like Kaori. a lot. She's very cute and quirky, and the scenes where she's on screen tend to be the best ones in the anime. But if I'm being honest, she's more of a plot device with a fun personality than an actual character. And this leads into another complaint of mine. A lot of the characters in Your Lie in April are a little lacking. Some, like Tsubaki, get a lot of screen time dedicated to exploring their perspective and how Kosei affected them personally, and all the stuff they're dealing with in their life. But others, like Watari, Kosei's best bro, barely get any screen time, even though they seem pretty involved in the story and you even get hints of an arc, but it's mostly just the beginning part and the conclusion. I want to hear more of what this guy, who held Kosei up as his rival and his main inspiration for improving, has to say after reuniting with him and discovering he freaking sucks now. Or what about the girl who fell for the piano and for Kosei in a way that's not strictly romantic, but started to turn romantic a little later? That's an interesting story. In fact, it could probably be its own story. Same with the first guy, which is exactly the problem. There are too many stories in this story and not enough time to do right by each of them. I will still hesitate to say that the show would have been better off without some of these people though, because for each of them I can still point to a specific moment that I really loved, and it only works because they're there. But I think things would have been a whole lot better if the show was just a little longer. Or maybe not, actually, because there is another problem with Your Lie in April, and it's that things get repetitive after a while. Kosei is forced into a competition. He starts off good, then things go badly, and then he reels it in by the end and the crowd goes crazy. That's the basic pattern for all the musical parts. Now, it's not always completely the same. Sometimes it's not a music competition, or Kosei starts off badly, or the crowd doesn't know what to think by the end. But it's all pretty similar, and I have a theory that if the music wasn't as good as it is, people would be more upset by this, or by the melodrama. Generally, I dislike melodrama, especially in stories involving teenagers, because there will be an attempt at making something tragic or heavy, but it almost always turns out like,
I dropped out in the 4th grade to run drugs to support my nana.
That means you haven't known the triumphs and defeats, the epic highs and lows of high school football.
I've seen some critiques of Your Lie in April which cite the melodrama as the chief issue, and while I do agree that it can get out of hand, I don't actually think it's all that bad for the big stuff. It's just that things often feel forced. The circumstances are fine, what actually happens is fine, but it's the way things unfold that I start to take issue. I think linear drama describes it best. The show will present you with tragic tale after tragic tale, targeting your feelings in a formulaic way. The second you hear that one piano song, you know what's coming. And like I already said, the show is on the repetitive side, so this will come up a lot. And I'll be transparent here and say that it still got me pretty much every time, which shouldn't be all that surprising. I mean, Your Lie in April is sad. Most people who've seen it will tell you that it's going to devastate you. And it will, for a lot of people. But I really think it depends on the person, because I could easily see someone not feeling much of anything because everything is so telegraphed and orchestrated. This is the part where you cry, this is the part where you laugh, this is the part where you feel inspired, this is the part where you feel depressed. And you're gonna know exactly which part is which, because the show will hold your hand and tell you exactly how you're supposed to be feeling at that moment. This kind of hand-holding is everywhere in Your Lie in April. Anytime Kosei performs, you will have a litany of other characters who exist solely to tell you everything you're supposed to take away from his performance. Now, I'm sure that some of this stuff is just a carryover from the fact that Your Lie in April was originally a manga, and manga tend to lack sound effects, so this type of dialogue is kind of a necessary evil. But this is anime. You don't need that stuff here. Maybe this is a hot take, but I don't think an adaptation should always adapt things one-to-one. I think you need to factor in the medium, look at the strengths and the weaknesses, and take it from there. But above all else, you gotta remember the basic rule of writing: show, don't tell. I understand that we're dealing with a show about music geared toward an audience that overwhelmingly doesn't know much about music on a technical scale, but that really shouldn't matter here. There are plenty of different ways that you can tell me what I need to know about the music without just telling me what I need to know about the music, because that's lazy and boring. Unfortunately, this issue isn't just reserved to the musical sections either. There's a quick pan of various pills and medications. We cut to Kaori getting her bag and leaving the restroom. We don't see her eyes, but we don't need to. The silence and her body language say everything. But the scene stops anyway, and two women pop out to make sure that the audience understands that this girl has a lot of meds on her. Yeah, I know. I just saw it. Did you really think I'd miss something that was pretty clear? You see, that's the biggest flaw with this anime. It's constantly overstating its point to make sure you got the point. This is one of the reasons I don't feel all that bad about spoiling Kaori's eventual death. It's very obvious just from watching the show, and it's made even more obvious, frankly, by everyone gushing about how sad this anime is. It's like when people said Marley and Me was sad. Aw, gee, I wonder how the cute dog plays into that. Another thing I'll bring up is Tsubaki. Now, I mentioned that she gets plenty of screen time and her feelings and views are all adequately explored, and that is true, but I don't really like her. And I'm sure that some of that is because I dislike the comedic Kosei beatdowns and she's usually the one doing the beating, but I think another reason I dislike her is because she's trying to weasel her problems into the same tier as Kosei and Kaori, the former being a victim of child abuse with severe psychological trauma, and the latter being a girl who is quickly losing control over her own body as she dies slowly from an unnamed illness. And what is Tsubaki's main problem? The guy she always took for granted fell for another girl. Okay, maybe I'm just too much of a chud at this point, but I could not care less about that. Genuinely, I think Watary's story of him being this cocky guy with main character syndrome who blows his big chance to become a living legend was way more compelling and interesting. It doesn't hurt that he actually has some great scenes with Kosei, where he shows that he might be a terrible boyfriend, but he's a genuinely great friend who's there when it counts, ready to say the words you need to hear. But the show chose to focus on Tsubaki instead of him, and I think it shows poorly. Most of this video turned into me complaining about this anime, which I seem to be doing a lot of lately, so it might surprise you when I remind you that I do like it, and I still recommend it. I highlight all the issues to highlight how this anime is still great, in spite of them. Nothing I mentioned ever caused me to lose interest in the show, or write off the whole thing as just a sob story that insists upon itself. It is a great story, but the biggest lie about Your Lie in April is that it's a masterpiece, because it absolutely is not a masterpiece, just a piece of me. It hasn't left me ever since I first watched it years ago, and I don't think it ever will, because it taught me not to take life for granted, to appreciate the things I have, the people I know, and the gifts I've been given. Also, I still listen to the opening like once a month. That might have something to do with it. Anyway, until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Vult, and a big thank you to all the cultured.